What's going on, everyone? Sid Misra here, Certified Financial Planner. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. This video is a webinar recording that I did on July 14th with Ben White. Ben is a Senior Director of Talent Strategies at Titus Talent Strategies. He's also a YouTuber with the channel Ben Talks Talent, and his YouTube channel is amazing. He has so many great videos on how to prepare for the job search, how to go about doing interviews and asking the right questions, how to negotiate salary and compensation. Really great channel. Check that out. I'm going to have the link in the description below. But this webinar is with Ben, and he's going to be discussing things that you can be doing to maximize career moves. Very valuable to you, to the people in your network. So I would definitely recommend giving this a watch and sharing it with the people in your network that want to have better benefits, have better compensation, and a better life-work balance. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Take care. All right, so I think we're going to get started. If anybody joins on, they can just start from where they are, and then they can always come back to the recording on my YouTube channel. But I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar. It's Maximizing Career Moves with our special guest here, Ben White. Ben is the Senior Director of Talent Strategies for Titus Talent Strategies. He's also a YouTuber and creator of the popular channel Ben Talks Talent. So I want to have Ben give a little introduction. I know he wants to say some words, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the presentation. You can ask any questions that you want within the chat, and at the end of the presentation, after the slides are done, we're going to go into the Q&A portion where I'll be moderating it, asking the questions, and Ben will be giving his answers. And just as a reminder, again, this is all being recorded. It will be put on my YouTube channel for everyone to go through, and you can kind of pause, stop, do whatever you want to on YouTube and be able to watch it at your own convenience. So hopefully that makes it as accessible as possible. But Ben, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sid. Hi, everybody. So my name is Ben White. I have been in recruiting for the last 13 years. So essentially my entire career, and I've done it on the agency side, so third party, so headhunter, third party contingent recruiter, but I've also done it on the corporate side. So worked for Rockwell Automation as a corporate recruiter. So I've sat on kind of both sides of the desk when it comes to recruitment. And that led me to start my YouTube channel, Ben Talks Talent, to help people navigate the challenging world that is hiring and interviewing and maximizing their career moves. The thing that really motivated me to start is that I have found that there are great candidates out there who are amazing at what they do, but they are not great interviewers. And I thought that was a real shame. So I created my channel to help you, to help people who want to advance in their career, want to move forward, but do not love interviewing, which I totally get. And that's a little bit of the channel. Today, I want to talk about a few things, as it relates to just your career and finances, and how they're intermingled and how they might impact each other. So this is maximizing career moves, the why, and then the how. So I want to talk about the loyalty discount. I think if you rewound in America 40, 50 years, it was quite commonplace for people to stay with the same company for their entire career or for extremely long stretches of their career. And that was very normal. Today, that is not the case. You have the gig economy, you have people working in shorter and shorter stints in different jobs. I think the national average for people in America is about 3.1 years. Now, if you go into different, groupings, and if you look at millennials versus Gen X, you're going to be able to find different averages, but overall, it's 3.1 years. And that is very different than it used to be. And for a lot of reasons. I think you could probably look at companies and the way they do things, that's different. But there's also this idea of maximizing your career by making career moves. So there's a common term out there in HR and talent acquisition. It's called the loyalty discount. What it basically refers to is that when you stay in the job for an extended period of time, you're not maximizing your potential when it comes to earnings. When you make a move from one company to the other, now typically you will actually have a much larger increase than a standard year over year cost of living increase, merit increase that aren't even guaranteed. But when they are, they don't really compare to the financial benefit of making a move to another company. So the national average for a job change, so moving from one role to another at a different company, is about 14.8. If you compare that with probably the highest performance increase you could reasonably expect without changing jobs within your own organization, that's 4.5%. That is a massive delta. And it's an even more massive delta when you extrapolate that over the course of a career. So I did a little bit of math. I did this personally in Excel. So I would say Excel helped me with the math. It wasn't just me. But if you were starting at 50K a year over a 10-year period, if you moved once every 3 years, which is the national average, your expected salary at the end of that 10 years, when you have the the 14.8% moves, as well as year over year increases, for your second and third year at the company, you end up at $98,000. Now, if you stayed at that same company and experienced a 4.5% increase over that decade, you would end up at 74K. So that is a massive delta. You're talking about $24,000 just apples to apples. At year 10, 74, at year 10, 98,000. But probably what's more impressive to me, and I was taken aback when I finally hit enter and saw all the math, is that that's $101,000 over the first 10 years of your career. I have to tell you, and I'm sure Sid could extrapolate this a lot better than I, what you could do with $101,000 over the first decade of your career. If you threw that into a just your 401k, for example, from the time you were 22 to 32, an extra $101,000, what that means 20 to 30 years down the road is massive. And that is a loyalty discount. So I want to move to the next slide because I want to talk about that decision to maybe start looking at other companies. So let's go to the next slide.
So real quick, Ben,
Yeah.
what are some of the reasons why people would do that? Is it just being comfortable in a position? Is it kind of scared to put yourself out there a little bit?
Yeah, change avoidance is a powerful motivator.
Okay.
People get really comfortable. I think one of the interesting things about humans in general is that we are very adaptable. You get used to things. You start a habit, you will get used to that habit. You develop work friends. You're like, oh, well, I drive in and this certain way, and well, this is where I get my lunch. It's right next to where I work. And there's so many reasons to avoid risk. And with every move, there is a bit of risk. Interviewing is also scary. People don't like interviewing. A lot of people would rather get potentially mugged on the street than have to go through an interview process. So I think there's a lot of reasons, but there's a huge financial impact to that loyalty.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways is admirable. But in a lot of ways, it's wow, you're leaving a lot on the table if you don't at least sporadically explore, superior opportunities than what you're currently in.
Yeah, this isn't your parents' economy, right? This isn't the way that, the way they did it was different than it is now. We have to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. And there was pensions and there was other things that were set to be there to help and benefit. It's different. Cost of goods are different. There is a ton of things that are quite different. And, I think average tenure reflects that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about making the switch. Hopefully now all of you, after listening to that, were like $101,000. Well, yeah, maybe I should at least see what else is out there or be open to it. Now, once you have done that, here's the steps that I would personally recommend. You want to decide what that move might look like for you. So what do you want to do? What type of role do you want to be in? What industry do you want to be in? What type of company do you want to work for? Once you've done that, you want to set up job alerts on LinkedIn. Now, it's actually really easy on LinkedIn. You basically go to the search bar and you type in the type of role, maybe you type in and industry. I actually have provided Sid with a one-pager that has links to a bunch of videos. And this video is actually linked there. You can find it on my YouTube. My YouTube channel has over 270 free videos to help you navigate your career. And one of them is how to set up alerts on LinkedIn. And I have a 4-minute video on how to set up job alerts on LinkedIn from your phone in 3 minutes. So it's quite easy. But you set up those reminders that way right away. As soon as they are posted, as soon as they exist, you are made aware of the type of roles that are interesting to you. I also recommend selecting a list of target companies. So are there companies in your geographic area, or companies that are open to remote work that you admire and you would be interested in moving to. Once you've done that and you've made a short list of companies that you're specifically interested in, I always recommend that you can start engaging with people from that company on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a massive 24/7 networking platform, and you can pursue these connections. They post something online, you like it, it's that easy. Maybe you comment, maybe you leave a compelling comment and you start to build relationships. This is a little bit of work you can do before you fully commit to start building relationships that you can later leverage when you're ready to make that move. Next, I'm going to talk about setting yourself up for application success. Applying to jobs can be terrible. In a lot of ways, the system is broken. As a recruiter, I know that. I know that it can be really frustrating to apply to places and like never hear back, or apply, interview, and then they ghost you. Wildly inappropriate, irresponsible, and rude, but it happens. But there are things you can do to control the application process. So one of the things that I'm a huge fan of is customization. So when you apply to a job, you've gone through all this trouble to, create a LinkedIn, create a resume, look through a bunch of jobs, set up these alerts, look at companies. You've done so much work. It makes sense to put in just a little bit extra time to customize your resume for the job. Now, this could mean a lot of things, but at the highest level, it means looking at the job description, looking at what's required, and then assuming you have done those things and you have similar experience, mimicking some of their languages, responsibilities in your prior jobs when there is alignment. You're basically allowing an applicant tracking system and a recruiter or an HR person to see the alignment between your experience and the role you're applying for. So I think customization is really important. I have videos on that too. Apply early. That's why you set up the LinkedIn alert. I remember as a corporate recruiter, we would get inundated with responses. And we would post a role, and literally by the end of that week, I would have to turn off the posting, or you would only view the first 3 to 5 days of applicants, and then everyone else, for compliance reasons, you would say, hey, we only viewed the first 20. Now the back 150 people who applied to this role will never even get looked at. We were an OFCCP compliance company. We were a government contractor. So we had to make sure that we were doing certain things by compliance standards. So for a myriad of reasons, even if they're not a company that is focused on compliance, even if they're a small company, they may only consider the first handful of candidates. So you want to apply early. You also want to have a really strong LinkedIn profile and link it at the top of your resume. Less than 50% of people actually link to their LinkedIn resume on their or their LinkedIn profile on their resume. And it increases your likelihood of receiving an interview, all things being equal, by like 75%. So have a great LinkedIn profile that allows you to be found by people like me who search every single day for candidates on LinkedIn, and then link it on your resume. And then I have another thing here, and it's used action verbs to boost the visualization of your impact. So there is a lot to be said nowadays about soft skills and action verbs to give life to your accomplishments on your resume. I don't want to go into the detail because it could take a long time to talk through all the different things, but resumes can be very bland and uninspiring. But if you take the necessary steps to demonstrate your impact, use action verbs, and lay out your soft skills, you can make your resume much more compelling, both to applicant tracking systems and to the people who are reviewing them in an inappropriately short amount of time to maximize your impact as a candidate.
That's awesome, Ben. So, you were saying in the first part of this slide here, right? One of the most important things is deciding what kind of role you want, right? Like there's got to be a level of introspection here where you're figuring out what you want, what kind of role you want, what kind of team possibly, what is the job, what are the responsibilities. So that being proactive about that, and then the rest of this is all very proactive, right? You can't expect it to happen. You have to set up the alerts. You have to figure out the companies that you want to target, and then you're talking about customizing your resume for the job that you want. So there are things that people have to be doing to put the effort in to get the opportunities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I view it is, if you want above average results, you're probably going to have to take above average steps. Mm-hmm. And that involves being proactive. It involves customization. And just to reiterate that, your first comment was you have to decide what you want for yourself. And I put that on the slide because I really do believe it. It's so easy to become disenfranchised with your current job and leave your job just to leave it. But people don't often take the time to make sure, is this what I want to do next? What is the downstream impact of the move I'm making today? Is this the type of role I actually want, or am I just listening to new opportunities to get out? It always needs to be, even if you're running away from something, it needs to be about what you're running towards as opposed to just what you're leaving. And I think being really honest with yourself and creating a list of what's important to you and remembering that as you move through the process with various companies is incredibly important, so you don't end up in the same spot you're leaving. You have to be cognizant of that, and you have to be intentional with your actions.
I love that. Intention is so important. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So the basics, I'm going to talk about just like basic things, and this is I'm going to go through this. This is basically telling you what we're going to talk about for the rest of this presentation for the most part. We're going to be talking about just doing your research on a company, preparing great questions to ask, knowing your alignment and misalignment when it comes to the role, practicing answering common interview questions, creating an impact list, and then knowing your routine. So these are some of the things I want you to do as you're actually preparing to interview with companies when you've made the decision, you've applied, and now you're in the stage of interviewing. So the first one is company research. As a corporate recruiter, and this sounds stupid, and it is a little bit stupid, but it happens, is the first question I would ask people is, what do you know about our company? And I can't tell you how many times people blanked that answer. That would be like pulling out of your driveway and crashing into your mailbox. It is literally the first step. What do you know about our company? So review the job description and be prepared to talk about the strengths and address misalignment, right? So I always tell people, when you apply to a job, don't just apply and go on with your life, go watch Netflix, go for a run. Make sure you save that job description. I will literally copy the job description and paste it into a Word document. So in case it goes away, by the time you interview, you still have access to the information and you can prepare appropriately. Research, know the company, go to Google, type in the company name, go to news articles and actually read about the organization, go to their page, read about their services or their products, what they do, their About Us section. You should want to do that so you know about their values and those things as well. But be informed. It is so important not to be the least informed candidate. Being informed is the advantage you give yourself in the interview process. The next thing you want to do is you want to understand the recent and current events for the company. You go to Google, type in their name, and you look at the the news and the articles. You're going to see, have they acquired anyone recently? Have they closed down a facility? That's relevant information. Do you want to run to a company who is experiencing layoffs? I mean, it's probably not a great decision. So be aware of what's going on with them so you can speak to current events, but just also to inform yourself about whether or not it's a move that makes sense. Then go to the LinkedIn pages of the people interviewing you. Oftentimes when you get invited to an interview, you can look at the invite, look at the participants and see who you are going to meet with. Go to their LinkedIn page, learn about them. Is this their second, third, fourth role at the company? Have they been promoted? What are their interests? Do you share an interest? People often will put at the bottom of their LinkedIn page that they volunteer for different organizations. Do you have that in common? If you go to the same university, you want to learn more about them, because the more you know about them, the better your questions can be for them, the better positioned you are to build connections with them. For a host of reasons, you always want to be more informed than less informed. So I like to go to the pages of the people who I'm going to be meeting with to learn about them prior to actually interviewing with them. The next thing that you need to do is prepare to answer company specific interview questions. They're going to ask you why do you want to work here? You should never go into an interview with a company if you can't tell them why you want to work here. Why are you a better fit for this role than other candidates? Mind blown. Sell yourself, right? How are you better than the person sitting to the left and the right of you to execute this job for us? And then what do you know about BAC company? I think I meant to write ABC company, but just pretend it's the same company. So what do you know about us? These are just questions that you should never go into an interview not ready to talk about. And you'd be surprised how many people are. So yeah, that's that page. Prepare questions. If I had to look at the last 13 years and create a pie chart of all the terrible reasons that qualified, great candidates did not get job offers, at the very top or near top of that list is the hiring manager comes back to me and goes, Ben, that was a great candidate, but I just don't think they're interested. And I say, why? Why do you think that? He said, well, the candidate at the very end, I asked if they had any questions, they had none. So they might not be interested. I could try to convince the hiring manager as a recruiter, no. They're just super well researched. They know all the answers to everything. They didn't have any questions for you. They're going to believe you're not interested or you weren't prepared. And it is going to be very hard for them to get over that. So good questions aren't salary and benefits related. That's very self-serving. Good questions are related to the role in the organization. Not that you don't deserve that information, because you do, but from their perspective, right? We want to look through the eyes and through the lens of the person interviewing you. What would make them think you are a compelling candidate? And one of the clear answers to that question is great questions to ask them. Why is a role open? What is the most challenging aspect of this role? What are your plans for this department over the next 12 months? What is it that has kept you at this company? Or what do you love about this company? These, or one of my favorites, I didn't put this here, but I would be remiss if I didn't include it. What are the objectives that a person who is successful in this role needs to accomplish in the first year? What are the behaviors of people who have previously been successful in this role? If you go to my YouTube channel, I have a video called 27 Great Questions to Ask in Your Interview. Pick 7 to 15 of them and always be ready. Like have it loaded, have it ready to ask them. And here's an important factor. If you ask a bunch of good questions to the first person, and then you go to the second interview and be like, oh no, I asked all my good questions to the first person. Don't do that. Ask the questions again. Part of it is about you ascertaining information, but another part of it is them knowing you had good questions to ask. So even if you need to repeat, always ask questions. It is a huge differentiator. Questions should demonstrate interest that you have and that you did research. It is so important. So I don't want to belabor this point anymore, but I would feel good about you all leaving this and going, I know I need to bring questions in. So very important part of candidacy.
This is one of those things that it's the bare minimum, right? If you don't do this, you are like the outlier, and automatically they're like, well, this person's just different from everybody else. We don't also want them because they may not show interest or that they've done their homework.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine being a hiring manager and you interview 5 candidates and 4 of them ask you 5 to 10 compelling, interesting questions that absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, let you know, oh, they did research on my company. And then there's one candidate who has no questions. Do you have any questions, Ben? No. You don't want to be that candidate. That is not going to help you. So yeah, it is super important. The next thing that I would recommend you do is be ready to answer common interview questions. So these are questions that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you are going to get asked. If you go to my YouTube channel, I do have a playlist of 30 interview questions and answers that will help you navigate all of these. But here are 5 that you're going to get asked. At some point, you will get asked these questions. Why are you interested in this job? So important. If you cannot give a compelling answer to that, you might as well close your laptop if you're in a Zoom interview. If you're an in-person interview, stand up, shake their hand, walk out, and be better prepared for your next. It is so important. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but why are you interested in this job? I have a rule for this. To nail this interview question, it's called the 50-50 rule. 50% of it needs to be why the company is compelling to you. 50% of it needs to be why the job is a great fit for you. So why are you interested in the company? If you can do these 2 things, 50-50, you're going to crush this interview question. What are your greatest strengths? You need to be prepared to talk about this. And ideally, there's alignment between a significant responsibility in the role and what you bring to the table. If your greatest strength was public speaking and you were interviewing for and Sid, don't take this personally, an accountant role, like, you know, like the same like neighborhood, like,
Yeah.
is that really going to help? Like if I was a hiring manager, I'm like, oh, amazing. That doesn't help us at all. So don't do that. You know, why do you think you'd be a good fit for this role? You have to be able to talk about why you can make an impact. Every single hiring manager interviewing you in your interview is imagining how you can help their team. What problem are you solving? If you don't give them a compelling reason, they're going to assume the reason doesn't exist. How would you describe what we do? Be able to talk about what they do. Again, kind of a bare minimum thing. And then what are you looking for compensation wise? Which is such an interesting question. In the one pager that I provided, said I have a full video on everything you can do step by step to maximize salary negotiation, from applying to counteroffers and everything in between. But you know, this whole presentation, at the core of it, is why do you want to consider making a move? Why would it be beneficial to you financially, to your career, et cetera? And then how to do it. Do not arrive at this question without having a plan. Because the last thing you want to do is miss out on 10% of the compensation you might have been able to achieve because you weren't ready for it. So I've got an answer, a video to that too. At the very end, I mean, like if I was to describe high level what you need to do, don't be the first person to give a number, but also don't be contentious. Set yourself up to have leverage by not needing to take a job. There's a whole host of things. I could talk probably for like 20 minutes on this topic alone, but be ready to talk to it in an interview.
That's great. Yeah. And I think one of the main points here, and again, with your whole presentation, is you got to do your homework. You got to be prepared. You got to be willing to put the work in if you want to get those jobs. It's very few people are headhunted. Very few people are recruited. Everybody else has to put this work in to be able to get the positions that they want. And these are really, really great questions. Go to Ben's YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Ben Talks Talent, like he was mentioning, so many incredible videos that are answering these questions. You know, the 27 interview questions, you just literally take 10 to 15 and you're done, right? Practice them and you're good to go. So this is great stuff, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, to your point too, when you said like everybody isn't headhunted, I got to tell you, I'm a headhunter. Well, I'm not anymore. I manage a team of headhunters. I have like 40 headhunters on my team. And even if you're headhunted, if they're headhunting you, they're headhunting another person like you.
Yes.
You still need to be competitive in the interview. You still need to stand out. So even if a recruiter reaches out to you, gets you on the desk of the hiring manager, you still need to bring your A game.
Yep.
So I would say even in that case, you want to make sure you're doing it.
That's good. That's a great point, and absolutely correct. Yep.
So I want to talk about something that is a strategy I always advocate the candidates do, and it's creating an impact list. An impact list, they tell the story of the accomplishments, and ideally, you know, you quantify that impact, right? So this is what I tell people to do. Look at your resume, and for every single job you've had, or at least the last, like if you've had more than 5 jobs, at least 5, and think about the most significant accomplishment you had at each one of those jobs, and then write out, okay, what exactly was it? How long did it take? What, you know, why were you in that situation? What did you do? And then what was the impact? So think big accomplishments, challenging situations, learning moments. Think of a couple at each role, and it makes it really powerful if you can add a financial ramification to it. That's what I consider quantifying your impact. So, for example, if you're in procurement, and you could say negotiated a deal with a supplier that over the course of 12 months saved my company $250,000. You want to go probably into a little bit more detail than that, but that's what we're trying to achieve here. Talk about things you've done in the past related to the responsibilities of the role you are applying and interviewing for. Talk about what you specifically did, and then talk about the savings or the impact to your company. It could be elimination of waste, it could be cost savings, it could be additional revenue, it could be whatever it is specific to what you do. Because if you do that and you familiarize yourself with the most significant or the 2 most significant things you've done and everything, like every single job you've had of your career, those are going to help you answer so many interview questions in the moment. right? Oftentimes you get into an interview and they go, give me an example of a time when blank. And you're like, whew, I know I have done that. I just cannot remember what, when, how. If you go through the early work of creating an impact list and actually talking about the things you've done and the impact of the things you've done, you are going to crush so many interviews because you're going to go into it with examples teed up, ready, well remembered, well detailed, with the impact highly qualified, highly quantified. Hiring managers, when they hear the stories on impact lists and they hear about the things you've done for previous companies, it allows them to imagine what you could do for them. And that is a really powerful tool. I guarantee you, those are the type of stories that allow you to stand out as a candidate. So I'm a huge fan. Like, I would never go into an interview without an impact list created.
That's great. And I, as someone who was a former job seeker before I started working for my dad, I'd never even heard of this. So I think this is fantastic. This is something that maybe not a lot of people know about. And if you put the work into doing this homework, like you said, you have it ready to go and you can talk about it. You can, convey that message a lot better.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool. You probably haven't heard of it because I just thought of it and I was like, I'm gonna call it impact list. But
that's great.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly powerful tool and it's a huge differentiator. And differentiating yourself is really important. One of the things I do on my channel is I make company specific interview guides. So how to get a job at Apple, how to get a job at Microsoft, how to get a job at Netflix. And the reality is, when you're interviewing for these companies, the roles are highly competitive. It is not enough to be good at your job, to be a good interviewer. You still need to stand out. And this is one of the many tools that I think you can arm yourself with to effectively stand out.
Great stuff.
So know your routine. I think we're rounding the back nine here. Make sure you bring a couple extra copies of your resume to every in-person interview. I do a lot of hiring for my team in addition to helping my clients hire. And I don't care, actually, if someone brings a printed copy of their resume. I'm familiar with my computer. I'm online. It is not a problem. But my sales counterpart, and we often interview together, he'll literally rule someone out. Well, they didn't bring a copy of their resume. And I'm like, well, hold up. They were really, really good. Let's not miss the forest through the trees here. But there are literally hiring managers like that. So when you go to an interview in person, and if there are 5 people, bring 7 copies of your resume. I always do X plus 2. X is the variable that you know there's going to be 5 of them there, or just bring 2 extra. Know the dress code, pick out the outfit. I would literally ask the recruiter, hey, what is the attire like in your office? There's nothing wrong with asking. I would always rather have more information than less information, so I always ask. Find the location, know how long it takes to get there, and arrive there. That's the wrong there. 15 minutes early. So for me, like, arrive 15 minutes, walk into the lobby 10 minutes. I know that is very specific, but you don't want to be late. It is better to be 10 minutes early than 10 seconds late, in my opinion, to an interview, because it's like, this is the first impression. You only get to make one. You walk in late, sometimes it doesn't matter what you say, it's game over. But you also don't want to arrive there too early. I've had people show up for interviews to interview for my team like 30 minutes early. And I'm like, I see what you were trying to do here, but like, I have things on my schedule for the half hour prior to you being here. I'm like, no, do we have to entertain you? Like out there juggling, trying to entertain. I'm like, it is hard. So you want to make sure that you get there 15 minutes early to the parking lot, 10 minutes early, walking into the lobby. That is the time. That's the perfect amount of time. But I say remove all the stressors, right? The last thing you want to do is be like, oh yeah, I Google mapped it at night. It said it took 17 minutes. Then it's rush hour and you're driving there and you're like, what do you mean it takes 77 minutes? It's like, well, you live in Atlanta. That's what's going to happen. Or substitute LA or whatever traffic terrible city you want to put in there. So yeah, those are just some of the little things, but sometimes it's the little things that makes the difference.
Absolutely, those little things add up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maximize negotiation. It's kind of bringing us full circle here, right? If you were going to make that move, I'm going to be very honest here. There is risk. Anytime you go from a job, you're doing well, you like your boss, you know your coworkers, like all those things, they're true. Making a move means there are risks, right? Like the company could all of a sudden go through a downturn, last in, first out, right? So there is risk. There's with everything we do in life, any change we make, there is risk. If you are going to risk, then there needs to be significant upside to offset that risk and make it worth it. You're not going to move for, like 5% increase in compensation. I wouldn't. I want it to be significant. That 14.8% at the very beginning, to me, I'm like, that's where it starts. That's the basement. You want to maximize that. Most people will not make that many significant career moves in their career, right? They're not going to take that big risk. They're not going to take that big chances 30 times. You may only get a handful of those times. So you want to make sure you maximize them. That is key. So do your research prior to going into the interview, right? You want to know, okay, well, let me go to like Glassdoor, let me go to like salary.com, go to any of the resources out there, Google it. There's so many tools. Go to multiple of them and find out, what do people in this industry with my experience and this title, what do they make? But be informed. Then have them give you the range first. The person who speaks first in negotiations loses. As a recruiter, I will be honest, I try to get the candidates to say their salary first. So we'll go through and I'm like, okay, excellent. Okay, hey, what are you looking for in order to make a move? And they'll be like, well, what's the salary range, Ben? And I'll say, hey, well, they're open, depending on the candidate. And so, it really just depends what that person brings to the table. So what would make it make sense for you? They're going to try to get you to give you, your salary range. And I always, I have a full video on how to answer, what are you looking to make? In addition to my salary negotiation video, because I just think it's that important. But be ready to have the conversation. For me, if I'm a candidate and they go, Ben, what are you looking for salary-wise? I'll tell you what I say. I say, well, salary is important to me, but it's not the most important thing to me in this stage of my career. I'm interested in what I'm going to be doing on a day-to-day basis, the development opportunity, and the organization that I'm joining and how I can make an impact there. So for me, it's not the most important thing. What is the range your organization has? And then if they counter me and they go, well, Ben, yeah, totally. And we'll tell you all those things, but just so I have an idea, what are we looking for salary-wise? I'll put it back in them one more time and be like, to be honest, it's really hard for me to give you a range because I don't have all the information right now. I don't know the full details of the role and the responsibility. I don't know the potential for bonus. I don't know the benefits, so I can compare benefits of my current job to my future job. I'm open to a salary that is fair and commensurate with my experience and the work I'm going to be doing, but I just don't feel comfortable giving a number right yet. That's how I personally answer it. And that normally is enough to get you through and then give the number first. If it's not, I'm not contentious. I will give them a number, but in my head, going into every single conversation with a recruiter, HR, or hiring manager, I know the least amount of money I would be willing to move for. I don't give them a range, because if you tell a recruiter, I'm looking for $60 to $1 million, like $60,000 a year to $1 million a year, you know what that recruiter hears? They'd make a move for $60K.
Yep.
So when you give a range, you are giving the bottom number of that range. You're not giving a range. So I give them a number, and make that your champagne number, your number where if you get that offer, you're popping champagne. That's how I do that personally, and how I recommend people do it. And again, learn how to counter effectively. I don't want to take up too much time because I want to have Q&A times, but I always counter. Every single offer I have ever gotten, I counter. And most of the time, I think just about every time, I make more money than I had in the initial offer. If you can learn how to effectively counter, you're going to be able to get more money. And that, like, the impact of the course of your career is massive. Because when you go for your next job, you're not negotiating on just like numbers out of the blue. One of the things in consideration is, what are you currently making? And if that number is larger because you've effectively countered 2 to 3 times, I mean, the long-term impact of that is massive.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, these are, practice a little bit, obviously learn from the videos, and this is probably stuff that it takes a little bit of time. You're gonna, have to learn along the way, right? I mean, no one just kind of goes into it understanding how to negotiate for salary. It's difficult, and you're trying to be fair, but also be fair to yourself, right? And so it's two opposing forces.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does take practice, but the beautiful thing is, as a candidate, you control a lot of this. You control how much research you do, and you control your level of preparation. So you can practice until you absolutely nail it. And there is free videos online to like practice out the verbiage, learn how to do it, and then just execute it.
Yeah, and I think one of the other points that you made, which was really important, was knowing the number at a bare minimum that you have going, your bare minimum number going into the interview, knowing that first, right? Doing the homework, having the plan, so you're not just kind of figuring this out of the blue or in the moment. You already know what that is, and if you don't hit that, or they're not willing to give you that, then that's not the opportunity for you. You're going to value yourself at a certain number.
Yeah, absolutely. There are companies out there too who are going to give you a fair offer regardless of what you are making. They're going to say, this person has this experience, let's put them at the midpoint, regardless of what they're making right now. And honestly, God bless them. Like, thank you for treating candidates fairly. That's amazing. But there are also companies out there who, if they get an opportunity to get you at a discount and get a great deal on a candidate, they're going to do it.
They're going to do it. They're business.
You've got to prepare yourself to not be taken advantage of.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, bonus. I think this is at the very end here. Thank you notes. Yes, they're worth doing. Keep it polite, positive, and make sure they know you're interested. I have a video on that. I have a video on a lot of things. Anytime anyone asks me a question, I make a video on it so it's accessible for all eternity to the world. But one of them is like, do thank you notes matter? And yes, and the most powerful thing you can do in a thank you note is reference something that specific person said in the interview and talk about how you found that to be motivating, inspiring, compelling, or you became more interested in the role after hearing blank. A great thank you note can be a powerful tool. I can't tell you how many times in 13 years, I've had a hiring manager say, Ben, these two candidates were even, but this one sent me a thank you note, this one didn't. I think I'm gonna go with that one. It can literally be like the single grain of rice that tips the scale. So I always tell people, like, it's just another control what you can control moment. You control sending a thank you note. And let them know, hey, if you have any additional questions about my experience, feel free to reach out to me at any point. That's it. Be confident, friendly, and positive. Yeah, I mean, so much of interviewing is being, smiling, being positive, not being negative, and being prepared. And if you can do those things, you're going to do great most of the time.
That's great. And then there's Ben's link to his YouTube channel. You can find him on LinkedIn. Definitely connect with him. Also on Instagram as well. So let's get into the Q&A real quick. I got a couple of questions. The first one, actually, one of the most common ones that I've got was, do I really need to write a cover letter?
Yeah, this is a great question. I am like a 90% no, 10% yes person.
Okay.
So most of the time, if you are, like for me, if I was applying for a VP of talent acquisition at another company, I would not. I have the experience. Like, you can look at my resume, you can look at that. Most recruiters aren't going to look at that anyway. But if you're coming off a career gap in which you haven't been working for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years for whatever reason, I would do that. And I would explain that you're excited to get back into the workforce, you took a career break, but now you're past whatever, made it so that you had to do that. And, here's why you feel you're a good fit. Or if you're making a career change. If you're going from being like a software engineer and now you want to write for a marketing firm because you've always enjoyed writing, you need to tell that story. So in those two circumstances, I would. In other circumstances, I just don't think it's necessary. If you it's your dream job, like me, I'm like a big Disney fan, right? Like, I am. And if Disney had a VP of talent acquisition, I might be compelled to write a cover letter to be like, here's why I am the perfect candidate for you. But otherwise, no. Okay. I think use that same time you were going to use to write a cover letter, customize your resume. Much, much more powerful.
Got you. That's perfect. Okay, I have one from a client's friend. I'm a single mother in my 50s and have been stuck in the same job for years. I feel like my skill set prevents me from getting a higher paying job. and wanted to know your advice on how to proceed as a more seasoned job seeker.
Yeah. So there's a few things to unpack here, right? From a skill set perspective, there are probably things you could do to sharpen your sword. I don't know what your, what field you're in, but let's just say it was like bookkeeping or accounting, right? You can go and take Excel courses for free on Khan Academy or Coursera that like really step up your skills, right? So if it's a skill ceiling, then I would add to your skills, add those skills onto your resume, onto LinkedIn, make sure that it's visible and people can find you. But I would say if it's strictly skills that are limiting your ability to get a better job, then try to do what you can do to add skills to your, to what you bring to the table. Now, the other thing you said there was a more seasoned person. So if you're saying that you think that people might be passing over you because of your experience and looking for people who are newer in their career, I think it's a topic that I've been asked to make a video on yet, but I haven't yet. And one of those things is you might be fighting ageism, and there might be people who are looking for, because they're afraid, oh, how much longer is this person going to be in the workforce? Do we want to invest in them and hire them? And I think that's one of those things where when you interview, you've got to make it clear that you enjoy this, you're passionate about what you do, and like drop out, like just every once in a while drop in, like, I'm going to be doing this for like another 10 to 12 years. I'm really passionate about this. I love this. If you don't say it, they might reach their own conclusions. Okay. So when I talk to people and I've coached people one-on-one, when they said, Ben, I feel like I'm being discriminated against because people think I'm going to be retiring soon. I'm like, well, have you said anything to let them know that's not the case? Like, well, then you probably should, tell them like, oh, I love this. It's really motivating for me. For me, I could see myself doing this for another, 10, 11 years. I'm doing some coursework to continue growing my skill set. You don't sound like a person who's going to be hanging it up when you say things like that. And I think for some people, that's important.
That's really interesting. So how you frame that is definitely important, bringing that to the forefront, making sure that you're telling them and you're not letting them assume something about you.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. If you've been out of work for a while, they've got a few, every person who's interviewing, part of what they're doing is risk mitigation. They want to make sure they don't make a wrong hire. And a wrong hire looks like a lot of things. Someone who comes in and is a bad culture or values fit, someone who is a low performer, someone who is going to retire in 11 months, somebody who is going to decide to leave the workforce again. And you can let them know that's not the case in your interview. If you've been out of the workforce for 4 years, you can be like, I was out and it was hard because I really enjoyed what I did. It was fulfilling to me, but I had to leave to take care of a sick family member. That issue is resolved. So now I'm looking to get back into work. I'm excited to continue doing what I was doing. I have no plans of leaving the workforce again. During the time I was out, I was working on my skills. I'm really excited to be able to enter the workforce. You can address those things in an interview.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a question here from one of the attendees. What is the best way to effectively follow up while in later stages of an interview process? I just finished the second round of interviews for a company I want to work for. I followed up and received a great response, but it's been a week since I've heard anything back. What should I do?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if I made a list of the comments I get on my YouTube channel, I guarantee you a third of them are this question or some version of it. One thing I learned very early on in recruiting, and it has stayed consistent the entire time, is that it never goes as fast as we want. Even as someone on the inside, I get you think you're oh man, I want to know. I guarantee you there's recruiters who have worked with you in the past who are like, oh my God, hurry up. And even hiring managers are like, hurry up. And then there's all these process things that get in the way. So I always tell people an appropriate amount of time is usually a week. So you followed up, you received a nice comment. If they said, hey, you should know things in the next couple of days, and you're like, okay, well, it's been a week and I still don't know. Well, then you could follow up again and being like, hey, just wanted to follow up again. We emailed last week and you said it'd be a couple of days. It's a week now. And just wanted to see where we're at, if there's any updates for me. And just be polite. It will never adversely impact you as a candidate if you were courteous and polite you give it a fair amount of time. Now, if you're polite, but you email me every 30 minutes, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But if you give it a week, not a day, but a week, there is nothing wrong with like once a week following up saying, hey, just wanted to check in. I'm still very interested. Have you heard anything? When can I expect next steps? And ultimately, if you don't get the role, it wasn't because you followed up. It was probably because they ended up going with a candidate who's a little bit more closely aligned with the job requirements. And that's okay. But you should always want to know. And there's nothing wrong with asking and following up as long as you're polite. So that's what I do. I'd every week, I'd say, hey, just wanted to follow up. They should understand that. When people follow up with me, I understand.
That's great. And thank you for the question there. Another one that we had sent in earlier, and I think this is actually a very common question. You probably get this a lot, and I'm sure you have a video on it because you have a video on everything. Should I apply for the job even if I don't have the required experience?
Yeah. So you know what's funny? I don't get this question a lot, and I haven't made a video on it, but I really do want to. So I'm going to address this in a way that, like, I feel like it's important to address it. And like some people out there might roll their eyes a little bit, but it is absolutely true. The data shows that men will apply for a role they're almost qualified for so much more frequently than a woman would. And it is one of the things that holds people back is their fear of being fully qualified. If you meet like 75 to 80% of the qualifications and you want that job, apply. And just know that like if you're doubting yourself, and by the way, I say that earlier bit statistically to be encouraging, to encourage women, like, yes, absolutely, you deserve to go after that role you want. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You meet 75 to 80% of the job requirements, you're probably more qualified than one or two of the candidates they're actively interviewing. And by the way, there's a big difference between the must-haves and the preferences. You meet all the must-haves and you meet none of the preferences, like hit send. Like hit send so hard you break the enter button on your keyboard. Like don't hold yourself back from the opportunity. So yeah, my answer, like if I was to be more succinct, yes, apply.
Awesome answer to that. I love that. And you should be shooting for the stars, right? You shoot up, and you just keep shooting high.
And then one thing, there's a big difference between being 20% qualified for a role and 80% qualified. You apply to a company and when you're 20% qualified, you might find yourself in hey, this candidate has applied to a ton of stuff here and they're not qualified. Most big companies have applicant tracking systems. They'll know if you've applied to 30 of their roles. You start to become like a little bit of a person with an asterisk. You might make it so you can't get into that company because you've applied too frequently. But every now and again, if you apply to a company and it's like you're 80% qualified, there's nothing wrong with that. So just wanted to make sure the delineation there was like crystal clear.
No, that's great. I appreciate the clarity on that. So the last question I'm going to stick with, because we talked about men and women applying for those roles. I got this question from a female viewer of my YouTube channel. What is your advice for someone job searching while pregnant, or someone who plans on or wants to get pregnant in the near future?
Yeah, this is like one of those things where it's like, I think probably like most men out there like never think how blessed they are to not have to go through like this obstacle and this hurdle and this potential career disruption. And it's significant. So first things first, I think thinking about getting pregnant in the future makes it a lot easier than actually being pregnant and interviewing. I think that is really tough because whether or not they're going to say it or not, like there are definitely some companies who are going to look at that and be like, oh, well, this person's currently like, 4 months pregnant. This is going to make it harder for us to go through. Whereas if you're trying to, I wouldn't be held back at all. Like if you're like, I'm thinking about doing this, yeah, apply for that job. Unless like you work for a company like Salesforce with like amazing like maternity benefits, then I'd be like, well, maybe wait. But my thought here is still go for it. If you want that job, and it is the unfortunate reality that maybe some of these companies are going to look at that, and it might hurt your chances slightly if you are currently. And I wish I had good advice for that. I wish I had something I could say like, here's a silver bullet for this, and there isn't, but I would say still go for it. And the companies who there's plenty of companies who hire people and they know, hey, this person, we're going to hire them in about 3 months. We're probably going to lose them for 3 months and they'll be back. They're a great candidate and we're going to move forward. And some companies won't. You're probably better off landing at the companies who are willing to anyway, long term.
Yep.
Those are the companies you want to be with. Sometimes when people tell me their stories of interviewing, they're like, I didn't get the job and they did this and they did this. And oh man, it really bothered me. I go, well, it sounds like you dodged a bullet. That's how I look at it. And I think it's kind of the same thing. You want to interview with that company who's going to have a stance that aligns with yours and is going to view it in a way you're comfortable with. And if they're not, then, annoying as it is, maybe that wasn't meant to be.
That's great, man. Ben, thank you. We're coming up on the hour. So I appreciate everyone taking some time to join us on the webinar. Ben, thank you so much for your time. Again, you can find Ben on LinkedIn, Instagram, his YouTube URL is there. You can just go to YouTube and search for Ben Talks Talent. It'll be the first channel that comes up. He's got a ton of valuable info and videos, things that you can start using literally right after this webinar to get yourself in a better position. And then for everyone who wasn't able to make this, I'm going to have this recording on my YouTube channel. I got to get it through compliance first because that's how it works here. But once that's done, I'll be uploading that and also sending out Ben's one-pager with the links to the video specifically, different things, how to get the LinkedIn job alerts and all of that. So he's got a one-pager with links there. I'll have that ready to go as well. Thank you so much, everyone. And Ben, thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.